Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we are going to be doing something really exciting. We are going to be building an app with UiPath, which integrates together with a UiPath RPA bot. All right, so if you log into cloud.uipath.com, you will then be presented with this dashboard where you can click on apps over here. And apps is where you can create apps with UiPath. All right, so you can click here to create a new app. But before we even do this, we first need a process which we can connect to our app. All right, so what we're going to be doing in this example is we are going to build an exchange rate app. So the user will provide into the app as input, it'll provide a currency pair, for example, US dollars and Great British pounds. It'll provide those two, and then it'll then return the current exchange rate. First, what we're going to do is open up UiPath Studio on our machine. There it is, UiPath Studio. You can click on that. So that's going to open. And what we're going to use is we're going to use Google. And we search something, for example, USD to GBD. And we click enter. I misspelled that. Fine. But it'll come up with this little thing at the top of Google before the search results, and it'll show us the exchange rate. So no matter what exchange rate we use over here, it's going to give us our exchange rate that we're looking for. All right, so we can basically build a bot which is going to open Google, search this expression, and then we can scrape this text, and then we can use this to display in our app. All right, so let's now come here and start a new process in UiPath Studio. And I'm going to call this Exchange App. Or, yeah, Exchange App. All right, I'll click Create. So just thinking off the top of my head, for this workflow, we're going to need to first open the browser, then we type into the Google search bar, and then we're going to scrape the exchange rate. All right, so let's do that. So open main workflow. We can come to activities over here and search for an open browser activity. I can drag in our open browser into our design panel, and here we can enter the URL of the browser we want to open. So I'll put my double quotes and I'll say HTTPS, which is a protocol, google.com. Great. And then I want to set this to open a Chrome browser. Remember, you need to have your Chrome extension installed. If you don't have that, you can simply come to Home, Tools, and then click on Chrome over here, and it'll then install the extension into your Google Chrome. Right, but we can go back for now. So we have opened the browser. Next step is we want to type into. All right, before I type into, I'm just going to run this. Let me just close this. It should open up Google in a new tab. There it is. Google has now been opened in a new tab. And this is a search bar we are going to type into. So I'm going to drag in a type into activity. Let me just click stop. Doesn't let you edit the workflow while it's still running. There you go. Drag in the type into. And then I can indicate elements inside browser. And I can select our input box over here. But you can see how it's not working. For some reason, it thinks the extension is not installed. Let me just try again. That's not working. Let me go see. Manage extensions. Is UiPath installed? No, it's not. All right, so let's just quickly install that. So we can come to Home, click on Chrome, click OK. Then it's going to force close the browsers. It's okay. I'll just click OK. You can reopen them. OK. Open Chrome. There you go. Now you get this little pop-up UiPath Web Automation. You can click Enable Extension. I'm just going to come Manage Extensions, go to UiPath Web Automation, click on Details, and make sure you have it set to on all sites. Also, allow in incognito and also allow access to file URLs. Great. So now it should allow us to select the input box. So let's come back, indicate element inside browser. That's not working. Maybe we just need to close the browser and reopen it. Disable this, disable the type into, just so that we're able to open the browser when we run it. All right, indicate. There you go. So now you can see it's allowing us to select individual elements in the browser. So I'll hover here over the input field and I'll select that. Let's have a look at our selector. Make sure that it is dynamic. Yes, it is. Tag input. This looks like a reliable selector. Okay. Yeah, by comment out, I'm just going to right click on that and say enable activity. And now we want to type in our currency conversion pair. So for example, USD to GDB. So instead of typing it manually like this, USD to GDB, we want these to be dynamic, all right? Because we want these to be user inputted. So in the app, a user is going to input this, and then it'll then be inputted into the workflow. So for that, we can use arguments, right? And you don't want to use variables for this. You want to use arguments, and that's because when you need to pass values between your bot and UiPath app, all right, UiPath Apps, which is this over here, you basically need to use arguments. That's one important thing you need to know. Right, so we can create arguments over here. So we can create a from currency pair argument. And it's going in. We should also name it as best practice to actually write in underscore from currency pair. Keep the direction as in because this is going to be inputted by the user, and argument type is string. That's correct. So that's just text. We're also going to have our in to currency pair. So we have our from and our to. It's not actually a pair anymore, but it's fine. I'll just keep it as that. Enter. And then over here, we can simply write our from currency pair, use the plus to concatenate it with the word to with a space on either side as a string, and then plus our to currency pair, just like that. Now what you want to do is you want to set simulate window messages to true. Then you want to click on this little plus icon and select enter. All right. Now what this is going to do is this added this little string over here, but what this is actually going to do is it's going to trigger the enter button on your keyboard. Right, so this only works either on the default or send window message types. If you set it to simulate type, it's actually going to manually type out K enter, which we don't want. But having it set to send window message, it's going to actually press enter on your keyboard. If you went the simulate type method, you'd actually have to so if you set this to true and this to false, you'd have to delete this and then use a send hotkey activity instead and drag that just below like that. But we're not doing that method. I prefer this method. It's cleaner, it's less activities, so this is good practice. So I'm going to say type currency expression, and there you go. So I'm just going to close this Google browser and I'm going to run this just to test that it is working. Opens Google, should type in what we wanted, and there you go. Let's see. Okay, it currently just typed the word to, and that's because we didn't have any default values for our arguments. So I'm going to close this, and also notice how it didn't maximize the browser when it opened. So what we can actually do is we can just drag in a maximize window activity into our open browser, and then that will maximize our browser. Great, so let's just test this out. I'm going to come to arguments. I'm going to enter a default USD and a default, let's say, Great British Pound, GBP. There you go. And now let's try run this and see if this works. there you go. Look how it maximized the browser. Searched it, and there you go, USD to GBP. And we can see here is the value we're looking for. So to extract that, we want to use a get text activity. I'm going to use a get text and drag that below and indicate elements inside browser. And we want to get this text over here. So I'm going to select that. Now let's see what our selector looks like. So it looks like we have this in our name property, which we don't want. So I'm going to simply delete this entire expression and see what value it's going to show us when we try validate. Highlight. So we can see there in red, it was highlighting the number 1. So basically it's saying that this has the same selector as this, but this is clearly just the first index of the same selector which this one has. So what we need to do is we basically just need to change the index and get it to this one. So let's see if we type in over here idx equals, put some quotes, let's put index 2 instead. Validate that and highlight. So we can see index 2 is United States dollar. We don't want that. Let's go 3, validate, highlight. So it looks like that worked. So it looked like we needed to set the index to 3. So we can click OK. And what we want to do is now create an output argument, all right, and not a variable, but rather an argument of the out exchange rate. And set the direction to out. Then you want to come to your value over here and set the out exchange rate argument to the output value of our get text activity. Instead of get text, I'm just going to say get exchange rate, and that should be good. Before we continue, what I'm also going to do is I'm actually just going to copy this, and let's actually get the names of the currencies as well, which is basically United States dollar and pound sterling. So let's try that. So we're going to, instead of getting exchange rate, we're going to get from currency name, right? And let's come here to edit our selector, and I believe this one was set to 2. Highlight that. There you go. So you can click OK. And let's just create our argument. It's also going to be set to out from currency name. Set this to out. And also out our to currency name. There you go. So get from currency name, change this variable to our out from currency name. Then I'm going to copy paste this activity and get our to currency name. This is going to be our argument out to currency name. And we want to change our selector. I'm guessing the selector for this is going to be 4. Let's have a look. Validate, highlight. Yes, it is. Great. So we can click OK. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to test this with a message box. And I'm going to first output our exchange rate plus, put a space. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. So I'm just going to, this is just for testing purposes. We have our from currency name and our to currency name. Great. So I'm going to close this browser. We should probably also add in a activity to close the browser. So I'm going to use a close tab activity. Just drag that inside of our open browser. We just drag in the close tab and it'll close the tab that it previously opened. Cool. So let's test this. I'm going to click run here. should open up Google, search our expression. There you go. So 0.74, that's our exchange rate. United States dollar, that's our before, and our pound sterling, that's after. Great. So we can click OK, and it should close the browser. Did it close it? Yes, it did. Perfect. Right, so this looks like a completed bot, a very simple bot to get the exchange rate, but we can use this to now start building our app. So I'm first going to click Publish because you need to publish this to UiPath Orchestrator. I'm going to click Publish over here. Right, project published successfully, and the package should be called Exchange App. All right, so I'm going to close UiPath Studio since we don't need to use that anymore. And I'm going to come to UiPath Apps and click on Create New. So I'm going to create a new app. Let's give this a cool name. Let's say Exchange App. Silly name, whatever. Or I'll just call it Exchange. Right, create. And here we have basically it's the IDE for building the app. In the middle, you have the design panel. On the left, you have your elements tree where you can navigate between your different pages, different containers and elements. And on the right-hand side here, this is where you can change the properties of your elements. All right, so you can see it starts off by just going to click got it over here. It's basically telling us to click this plus button to add a new page or to connect a process. We can click got it. So you can see by default it provides this little white square, and this square is actually a container. So if you want to add new containers, you can simply click on this one, click this little plus icon, and it'll add little containers on the left and right of these, which you can use to add other elements inside. In my case, I'm just going to delete all of these, just clicking them and clicking delete on my keyboard. We're only going to use this container for now. I'm going to enlarge this one, all right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little name over here, top left. So I'm going to come to display and select header. So I'm going to drag in a header, just like that. And as you can see, if you click on header over here, you can see that you can change the properties on the right hand side. So I'm going to change the word header to the name of our app, which is Exchange. Okay. Next, I'm going to maybe add two little buttons, all right, to navigate between the home and the actual app. So let's come here and click add new control, and then let's go to input and drag in a button. Notice how now if I want to align this one, I have to come to style and then click navigate it to the right like that. All right, so let me just think. If we want to get them aligned, all right, what we're going to have to do is probably something like this. We add that, and then I'm just going to click this one and drag this over here. So we can see now they're aligned. This background, just by clicking on this background, you can see the background color is gray. I'm going to make it white, so then it looks flush together. If we want to, in fact, add another button, we can simply do this, and then add new control, drag in a button. There you go. So let's just adjust this so it's more towards the right. Okay, let's change how these buttons look. So here in the styles panel, instead of solid, we can change the look. So I'm just going to keep it as text, all right, the text style, right, without, because you can see by clicking these, it'll change. Now it's green, now it's red. I'm going to use this style. So on this button, I'm going to rename this button when it comes to General tab and change this button. I'm going to call this Home. All right, and then I'm going to change this button. I'm going to call it App. All right. I'm also just going to cut the height of all these containers since they don't need to be that tall. Right, I'm then going to add in a new container, or actually before we do that, the main page is actually going to be our home page. So I'm going to click on home and program this button. So I'm going to close this control and go to events. So on click, create rule. So basically what we're doing is we're creating a rule when our home button is clicked. So when home is clicked, create rule, we are going to open a page, and then what page to open is going to be our main page, right? And our main page is basically our home page. So that is fine. I'm going to close there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another page for our app page. I'm going to come here, click this little plus, and select page. So now we're creating a new page. So you can see here it says new page. We want to do the same thing that we did over here, right? Unfortunately, I don't know of a way, or it doesn't seem like there is a way to copy and paste elements. So you're going to have to rebuild this. So we can come to new page. We can start off by going to containers, use a container layout. All right, that's what we used before. I'll then drag this in here, right? And we can simply delete that container. Over here, I can then click this little plus and plus. In here, I'm going to be dragging our buttons and add another button here. Cool. Let's adjust the width of this container. So it goes to the right. Cool. Once again, this is the home button and this is the app button, but now we're on a different page. All right, so let's also just change the styles of this to look like that. Just this container height. Cool. And now, so basically we programmed this home button. It actually, we set it to go to the main page, but it's already on the main page. So we didn't actually need to do anything there. But for the app, we want to click create rule. We want to open a page, and we then want to open the new page. The new page, we can actually rename the page. All right, I'm just going to click close here, rename new page to, I'll just maybe call it, if you double click, app page. And then when we're on the app page and we click on home, we then want to go to events, create rule when it's clicked on, open a page, and open the main page. Great, so let's test this out. We're not going to see any difference. So on the main page, I'm just going to add a new, let's add a header just over here. And I'm going to say, in the header, I'm going to write some text. I'm going to say, exchange is a simple app to find the exchange rate between two currency pairs. For the style, let's use headline 3. Great. Let's click this preview button and let's see if this is working to change between. So here it starts off on the home page, right, which is here. If you click app, there you go, it goes to the other page. What I'm going to do now is inside the app page, I'm going to drag in a label. So on this label, we are going to call this the from exchange rate, or let's say from currency. Let's say from currency, and then add a new control. Then under input, we want a text box. I'll drag that in. Okay, and then I'm going to add another control, and let's now drag in another label, and this is going to be the to currency. And then we are going to drag in another control, which is going to be another text box. We have our from currency and our to currency. On these boxes, you can actually set the data type. So either string, secure string, Boolean, date, time, integer, decimal, or currency. In our case, it's just a string, so we can keep it to that. You can set default values. So for example, well, this is actually default text, so it could be something like enter from currency here. You can have something like that, right? But I'm just going to leave that blank. Cool. So we're then going to have a button, all right, like so, which is going to then do the calculation or get exchange rate. Just like that. Then what we're going to do is we're going to display the exchange rate maybe just below it over here. So let's just check out what this looks like. Preview. Okay, we have our home page. Then we click on app. Right, here we are. So we can enter our from currency and our to currency. If we want this gap on the left-hand side to be a bit bigger, we can simply adjust the padding on the element. So we can click this one, style, go to margin, and then you can see left, right, we can set this to a bigger number, let's say 50. You can see now it's now adding a bigger margin between the left and the start of the element. There you go. So maybe that looks a little bit nicer now that it's not too far to the left. There you go. Cool. So we basically want to enter something here like USD and ZAR, whatever, and then click Get Exchange Rate. And then by clicking this button, it should pop up over here with our exchange rate. All right, so in order to do this, we first need to create a process in Orchestrator, which we can then use to connect to our app. So to do that, we can first come to Home over here, and we go to New Service. So I'm basically just opening my Orchestrator instance, right? Then what you want to do is you want to go to Automations, and then you want to make sure you're on the Processes tab, click this little plus, and then go to the package, which we deployed earlier, which was our currency, or sorry, it was our exchange app. That's our package. I'm going to give a display name of exchange app, and I'll select my standard environment and then click create. Great. So now we have a process called exchange app, and that's the process we're going to be using. So you can click over here, top right, and click back to Automation Cloud. So you can go back to our apps over here. Now that we're in apps, here's our exchange app. I'm going to click this little edit icon so that we can edit it. We can open our app page, right? And we can click first on our from currency input field. So you can see here there's something called value binding. So this is how you connect a value to an element inside the app. So I'm going to click here, and then first it's going to ask you to connect a process because none have been added. So we can either do so here by clicking this, or we can come here and click this little plus button and then select process. All right, so choose from list. If you have multiple different services, you can select the one you want to use, but in our case, I'm using this new service and then select next. Next, you want to choose the folder and select the process. So in my case, we have our exchange app. All right, so you can actually select multiple processes if you want to use them in the same app. But in this case, I'm only using one, which is this exchange app. In from currency pair, into currency pair, and out exchange rate, out from currency name, and out to currency name. So we can select that. Perfect. And then we can go back to our app, select on this field over here, and go to value binding. Now we have our process. We don't need to add one anymore since it's already here. You can expand it by clicking the chevron, and then we can select our in from currency pair, and you can either double click it or you can simply drag and drop. So we double clicked, and you can see here now under the value binding it has our argument. So for our to currency, we can do the same thing. Click here, but now I'm going to show you how we can drag and simply drop it just like that. So we have our to currency pair, and then we have our button. So we need to program our button to trigger the process. So get exchange rate. So we want to go to events. So clicked on create rule. So previously we were using this clicked on create rule to open a page, but in this case, we are going to start a process. All right, so I'm going to click start process. Then it asks what process do you want to start? Then I'm going to click here, and then we can see here we have our exchange app process. So I'm going to drag and drop that one, and there you go. So you can change the job name. You can change some of these properties over here if it's an attended or unattended bot, and a few other properties, but usually leaving it to the default is good. I'll click close, and then the next thing we want to do now is display our output. All right, so let's do that. I'm going to drag in, I'm going to come to add new control, and I'm going to go to display, and let's display a label. All right, and on this label, I'm going to go to general, and here by the text, I'm going to backspace here, and I'm going to write out exchange rate. Let's see if that works. Go to preview. Let me close all these different browser tabs. We don't need them. Go to the app. From currency, USD, it says ZAR, get exchange rate. So here it's asking us to open UiPath Assistant. Note that UiPath Assistant is required in order to use UiPath Apps. If you don't have Assistant installed, you won't be able to do it. So for example, if you're using the Academic Alliance installation of UiPath Studio, it doesn't come with UiPath Assistant, and then you won't be able to do this. So community version and enterprise version has UiPath Assistant. So over here, I'm just clicking open UiPath Assistant. It's now checking if those codes are the same. We say yes, they are. We click allow. Great. So now let's click this get exchange rate and see what happens. The foreground process is already running. Okay, cool. There it is. This is the one that's running. Gets what it needs to get. Oh, we forgot to delete our message box. We'll click OK. And let's see, only one foreground process can run at a time. Dismiss. Okay. So yeah, it didn't show the output, but that's because it looks like it's not even showing here. So let's just add in. Let's use maybe a text box. In this text box, let's have under value binding, we can have our out exchange rate. Cool. So preview. App USD to ZAR. Then get exchange. Oh, I think I pressed it too early. Okay. Okay, cool. There's our output. So this is working. Let's just see. So this is actually editable. You can change this, which is why we don't want to use an input dialog. We want to use a label, out exchange rate. That could also work. Let's preview this, see if this one's working. The default, it says label. We can just delete that. USD to ZAR, get exchange rate. Okay, there you go. Bot's running. Does what it needs to do. Okay. There you go, 14.88. Okay, that's great. That works, and that's not editable, which is great. But the thing is, I wanted it to be as the text over here. So I wanted it to say something like this. Select here from currency name. So we're going to say 1 from currency name equals, right? I'm also just going to adjust the style over here, maybe make this a little bit bigger and put a margin on the left to maybe 50 as well, and a top of maybe 20. And then I'm going to drag in a new label. Cool. And that one is going to say the exchange rate value. So general, delete that. Our art exchange rate, space, our art2 currency name. This is then I'm going to change the style. So this is nice and big, and change the left to also 50. Oh no, that's wrong. Let's try that to 0, and then this one to 50. Cool. So let's see now if this is going to work. General, let's go preview. Go to the app. Let's say now USD to ZAR, get exchange rate. So it's 14.87. So it writes there 14.87. I don't know why it does not. Oh, maybe it's because of this. It's also not displaying. It's also not displaying our art currency name. It seems like it doesn't allow us to display the values in a label like this. So I think this is probably a bug. It shouldn't be doing this. It should actually be working. What I can do is I'm going to drag in a container or a container layout over here, and maybe also add in another container layout above it. Create a label. I'll say from 1, we'll say 1, do this, add a control, maybe it needs to be bigger to drag it in. There you go. 1 out from currency, then add another one of these and write the word, another label inside here, equals. So let's preview this. App. Okay, so we can say ZAR to Great British Pounds, get exchange rate. Okay, there you go. 1 South African Rand equals 0.050 pound sterling. Perfect, so that's working. Of course, it doesn't look so great. That needs to be fixed. However, it is working. You can see if you change pages, it refreshes everything. But yeah, one other thing I would recommend is that I remove the message box. I'm going to delete our message box over here, or right click, or rather just disable it so it doesn't run it. And by arguments, I'm going to delete these default values. And then I'm going to save all, publish this, publish. Okay, open this. Now we want to update our process. So we can go to automations, processes, select our exchange rate, exchange app, use the latest, okay, because we just republished it. There you go. So now it's not going to ask us for the message box anymore. Go to edit, preview, app, from currency, let's say ZAR to US dollars, get exchange rate. There you go, searches it, gets the exchange rate. 1 South African Rand equals 0.067 United States dollar. Awesome, that is working. I just want to basically give you a few final tips. All right, so now that that's done, we can now click this publish button, and it has successfully been published. To get the URL of the published app, you can simply go to apps. Then you can click these 3 dots and say copy URL. Then you can come here to URL, paste that, and then it'll open up your published app, which you can basically use as a front-end dashboard to manage and run your bots. Cool. So app, great. Here it all is. Another thing, all right, is if you just click on this directly, if you click this, it's going to directly run your app, right? Just like that. And if you want to share this app, right, let me show you. If I go to incognito, if you just send this to like a random person, it's not going to allow them to use the app. All right, you're going to see what's going to happen. It's going to request that you log in first. So the only people who can use the app are users with permissions to actually use the app. So to do that, you want to click these 3 dots and go to share. All right, and by going to share, you can then allow users. You can add users over here. So this is basically different users you have inside your UiPath cloud, right? If you want everyone for all your users in your organization to be able to use the app, you can simply toggle that. So yeah, that is basically how you can change the settings. You can just view the history of your permissions there. But to add users, you go to admin, then you go to users and groups, and then invite users. You put in the email address, and then you invite users, and then you can assign certain permissions to those users. For example, I'm an administrator of my own account. Great, so that's how you add users. Let's see what else, if there's anything else I could mention. You can export, delete, copy, clone. You can clone the app. So if I click clone, you'll see it's going to make a clone, and it gives it the same name with a 1. And then you can go and edit that app. Right. In this case, I'm going to delete this. Don't want to clone. If I come here back into editing the app, you can add additional processes, additional pages. So currently we just have our exchange app process and our main page and our app page. If say we want to add different user inputs, you can simply just drag them in. So you can drag in, say, a checkbox, and then a checkbox you would use with a binary variable or binary arguments inside your path. So in your path, you'd set your argument type to a Boolean. All right. So that's if you're using checkbox, because a checkbox is either true or false. Same would apply to a switch over here. The switch is also true or false. You have a date picker, which is pretty cool. date pickers, let me show you how nice date pickers are. If you have an attended bot and you're required to select a date, you can simply, it gives you this little drop down, and you can come here and you can choose the year, month, and the day. And this will then be an input in date as a date time, or rather date variable. You can actually set that over here. You can either set it to be a date or a date time variable, so that you can pass that directly into UiPath. What other controls? We have a slider. This is it. You would set your argument type to either a double or an integer. It accepts both. All right, and then you can set like minimum and maximum values, the increments on the slider, as well as a default value. So there's that as well. Sliders are also really cool. It's nice visual input elements that you can use. So you can see like that. It even has that little hover thing which shows the value as you slide it. What else do we have? We have a text area. That's basically kind of similar to a text box, except it's more of an area. So it's like multiple lines instead of just a single line. So preview that. Your app. Yeah, so you see this one, you can add spaces. It's like a multi-line input, where this is just a single line. You can't put multiple. If I'm clicking space on the keyboard, it's not letting me add a new line. So that's the difference between those two elements. Then what? So that's all the input, the display. This is just for visual. These are just for visuals. So if you want a divider, headers, custom lists, tables. I hope this video was helpful in learning how to use UiPath apps. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can drop them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching.